The garage was a chaos of wires and dreams, its air thick with the metallic tang of solder and the faint bitterness of Adwoa's instant coffee. Kofi Mensah, 12, hunched over a cluttered workbench, his slim fingers threading a circuit board with the precision of a surgeon. His curls stuck to his forehead, damp with sweat, as green LEDs flickered on his prototype, a device he called the Smart Grid Optimizer, designed to slash energy waste in tech campuses. He'd overheard engineers griping about server inefficiencies. At a community STEM fair, their complaints sparking an idea that kept him up nights. "You're gonna change the world, Kofi," his mother Adwoa had said, her Ghanaian accent wrapping the words in warmth. A janitor at Zenith Tech. She'd slipped him a flyer for their open house, her eyes tired but fierce. "Show him what you got." Kofi's world was East Palo Alto, a gritty pocket of Silicon Valley where rent ate half Adwoa's paycheck. Their rental home sagged under the weight of hope, its peeling paint a stark contrast to the gleaming tech towers nearby. At school, kids mocked his trash projects, their taunts cutting deep. "Who's gonna care about your junk, Kofi?" sneered Jamal, the class bully, his words echoing in Kofi's head as he soldered late into the night. But Adwoa was his anchor. Over dinner, usually rice and stew stretched thin, she'd share stories of her grandmother building a school in Accra with nothing but grit. "Your brains, your power," she'd say, ruffling his hair, her calloused hands leaving traces of hope. Across town, Victor Langston, 45, stood in his Zenith Tech office, the skyline glittering through glass walls. He was the image of power, sharp suit, sharper jaw, a billionaire CEO whose AI servers ran half the internet. But his polished exterior hid a gnawing dread. The Global Tech Alliance's sustainability contest, a billion-dollar contract to green, the tech industry was slipping away. Zenith Tech's energy consumption was a scandal, headlines screaming, "Tech giant's dirty secret." Losing could crater Victor's legacy, a fear that kept him pacing at 2 a.m. "We need a miracle," he muttered, rubbing his temples, his mind drifting to his estranged father, Roland, a retired engineer whose ideals Victor had buried under. Profit. Margaret Hensley, Victor's VP, strode in, her heels clicking like a metronome. "Consultants, Victor. Pay big. Look green. Win the contest," she said, her voice crisp, her blonde bob immaculate. She dismissed unorthodox solutions, her eyes narrowing at the mention of outsiders. Victor barely listened, his thoughts on Roland's old blueprints, eco-friendly. Server designs from Zenith Tech's scrappy days, now gathering dust in a drawer. Roland was a ghost, a reminder of the company's lost soul, and Victor's guilt for choosing wealth over principle. Silicon Valley was a land of extremes, billionaires in Teslas, families like Kofi's scraping by. Adwoa, Kofi's fierce ally, worked nights mopping Zenith Tech's floors, her stories of resilience fueling Kofi's fire. Margaret, loyal to Victor but elitist, saw kids like Kofi as nuisances, not innovators. Roland, living alone in Oakland, held secrets of Zenith Tech's past, his bitterness a warning of what greed could do. The community STEM fair, where Kofi first dreamed big, was a rare bridge between these worlds, a place where ideas could spark despite the odds. At Zenith Tech's open house, Kofi stood on a folding table, heart hammering, his prototype glowing green. The crowd, engineers in polos, execs in suits, reporters with notepads, murmured skeptically. "This can cut your energy waste by 30%, Kofi declared, his voice cracking but bold, his frayed hoodie a stark contrast to the polished room. Victor, in the front row, froze, his eyes locking onto the boy. This kid, barely taller than the table, held a spark that could either save Zenith Tech or burn it down. The open house buzzed with corporate chatter, but Kofi's demo sliced through like a signal flare. His smart grid optimizer, a clunky box of circuits, used AI to reroute power across servers, cutting waste with eerie precision. Victor pushed through the crowd, his pulse quickening. "You built this alone?" he asked, his voice low, almost disbelieving. Kofi nodded, clutching the device. "Yes, sir. Took a year. Tested it on my laptop." His eyes, wide but steady, met Victor's. Margaret, arms crossed, snorted from the sidelines. "He's a kid, Victor. We can't bet the company on a science fair stunt." Her tone was ice, her prejudice barely veiled. She saw Kofi's address, his skin, as a strike against him. Victor ignored her, his mind racing. "Present to my team tomorrow," he told Kofi, his voice firm. The boy's face lit up, but fear flickered in his chest. This was real now. Adwoa, watching from the back, gripped her purse so tight her knuckles paled. She'd spent her last $50 on a refurbished microcontroller for Kofi, skipping her own groceries. That night, she handed it to him, her smile fierce. "You're ready, Kofi. Don't let him dim you." He hugged her, the weight of her sacrifice heavy on his shoulders. "I won't, Mom," he whispered, his voice thick. At home, Victor found a package slipped under his door, a yellowed blueprint. From Roland, detailing Zenith Tech's first eco-server, scribbled with notes about sustainability. Victor's throat tightened. His father had begged him to prioritize green tech a decade ago, but he'd chased profit instead. Now, Kofi's device echoed that lost dream. He dialed Roland, hands shaking, but got voicemail. "Dad, I need to talk," he muttered, the blueprint trembling in his grip. Elena Voss, CEO of rival Nexus Corp and the contest's overseer, upped the stakes via a press release. The deadlines moved up. Only the best survive. Her voice, smooth as silk, hid a shark's bite. Kofi, unaware of the corporate games, agreed to work with Zenith Tech, his excitement tinged with dread. "I can make it better," he told Adwoa, his voice buzzing as he sketched upgrades late into the night. She nodded, but her eyes held a mother's worry. She knew this world could chew up her boy. The blueprint, creased and coffee-stained, sat on Victor's desk, a fragile link between Kofi's raw genius and Zenith Tech's forgotten heart. It whispered of redemption, if Victor could muster the courage to listen. Zenith Tech's lab was a cathedral of tech. Servers humming, screens glowing, air thick with ambition. Kofi, in sneakers and a borrowed badge, felt like an imposter among engineers twice his age. "Nice toy," one smirked, eyeing his optimizer like it was a Lego set. Kofi's jaw tightened, but he focused, tweaking circuits with a precision that silenced doubters. Victor, watching from a glass office, felt a spark of hope. "He's the real deal," he told Tara, his lead engineer, a no-nonsense woman with a knack for spotting talent. She nodded but warned, "Margaret's blocking his server access. She's calling him a risk." Margaret was a force, her emails sharp as blades. "Victor, this boy's unvetted. We need consultants, not charity cases." Her disdain wasn't just professional. Kofi's background grated against her gated community worldview. She delayed his tests, citing security protocols, and whispered to colleagues that Kofi had hacked data. The rumors spread like wildfire, and Kofi overheard them in the lab, his stomach twisting. "I'm not a thief," he muttered, soldering late into the night, his eyes burning with fatigue and hurt. Adwoa, mopping Zenith Tech's floors at 3 a.m., found Margaret's memos in a trash bin, proof of her sabotage. "They're scared of you, Kofi," she said over breakfast, her voice low but fierce. She'd rallied neighbors, starting a petition with 200 signatures to back Kofi's work. "You're not alone," she told him, handing him a thermos of jollof rice, its spicy warmth a reminder of home. Kofi hugged her, his voice small but determined. "I'll prove 'em wrong, Mom." Victor, wrestling with doubt, drove to Roland's Oakland apartment, a cluttered time capsule of Zenith Tech's early days. Roland, gray and stooped, opened the door, his eyes sharp despite his age. "Chasing ghosts, son?" he asked, tossing Victor a faded journal. Inside was an algorithm for power distribution, scrapped when Zenith Tech went corporate. "That kid's got what we lost," Roland said, his voice gruff but warm. "Don't screw this up." Victor left, journal in hand, his chest tight with regret for the years he'd ignored his father. Kofi integrated Roland's algorithm, boosting his optimizer to a 35% energy cut. He presented it to Victor in a sterile conference room, his voice steady despite Margaret's glare. "This could save millions," Kofi said, clicking through graphs on a borrowed tablet. Victor clapped his shoulder, a rare smile breaking through. "You're changing the game, kid." But Elena Voss struck back, leaking a TechCrunch story. Zenith Tech's green push is a fraud led by a child. The article went viral, and Margaret pounced, accusing Kofi of stealing proprietary code. "He's a liability," she told Victor, her eyes cold as steel. Kofi's heart sank, his hands trembling as he read the article. "I didn't steal anything," he told Adwoa, his voice cracking. She marched to Zenith Tech, petition now at 500 signatures, and confronted Tara. "My son's no thief," she said, her voice shaking with fury. Tara, risking her job, slipped Kofi access to a test server behind Margaret's back. Roland, reading. The hit piece mailed Kofi a note. "Keep building, kid, they'll see." His words, scrawled in shaky pen, felt like a lifeline. Elena unveiled Nexus Corp's rival system at a press event, its 25% energy cut polished but underwhelming. Victor, torn, faced a choice: back Kofi's untested genius or Margaret's safe consultants. He met Kofi in the lab at midnight, the boy's eyes bloodshot but fierce. "Why do you trust me?" Kofi asked, his voice small. Victor hesitated, then said, "Because you remind me of who I wanted to be." The contest loomed, and Kofi's optimizer was their last shot. Kofi's hope flickered under Margaret's attacks, each accusation a knife to his confidence. Adwoa's fire and Roland's wisdom kept him grounded, while Victor's growing trust cracked his cynical shell, though fear of failure clung like damp fog. The San Francisco Convention Center was a sea of suits and spotlights, the Global Tech Alliance finale crackling with tension. Kofi, in a borrowed blazer 2 sizes too big, stood backstage, his optimizer humming in a sleek case Tara had helped design. His palms sweated, his heart a drumbeat. Elena's team presented first, their system cutting 25% energy. A solid number, but Kofi knew he could beat it. Victor, in the front row, gave him a nod, his jaw tight with nerves. "You got this, kid," he mouthed, his eyes steady. Kofi took the stage, his sneakers squeaking on polished wood. "My smart grid optimizer redistributes power in real time," he said, his voice shaky but growing stronger. He clicked a remote, and the screen lit up with a live demo. Zenith Tech's servers, running his device, hit a 40% energy cut. The crowd gasped, then erupted in cheers. Kofi's chest swelled, his grin wide enough to hurt. But Margaret, in the wings, stepped forward, her voice cutting through the noise. "This data's unverified," she said, her tone venomous. "He's using stolen code." The room fell silent, all eyes on Kofi. His face burned, his throat tight. "I didn't steal anything," he stammered, his voice barely audible. Victor stood, his presence commanding. "Kofi built this from scratch," he said, his voice booming. "I've seen the proof." Adwoa, in the audience, held up Roland's journal, its algorithm open for all to see. "My son's no thief!" she shouted, her voice breaking with pride and fury. Tara, at a laptop, projected Kofi's code logs, time-stamped, clean, undeniable, exposing Margaret's lie. Roland, in the back, clapped slowly, his weathered face glowing with pride. Elena, on stage, faltered, her system outclassed. Margaret, cornered, stammered, I was mistaken," her face crimson as the crowd murmured disapproval. Kofi, heart racing, finished his demo, the screen flashing Victory Zenith Tech in bold green. The applause was deafening, cameras flashing like stars. Victor joined Kofi on stage, gripping his shoulder. "This is his invention," he roared, and Kofi's grin lit up the room, tears pricking his eyes. The convention center, alive with lights and cheers, was Kofi's battlefield, his triumph a defiant middle finger to every doubter who'd tried to dim his light. Zenith Tech won the billion-dollar contract, and Kofi's optimizer became their flagship tech, rolling out to data centers worldwide. Victor, transformed, launched the Kofi Mensa Innovation Fund, pouring $50 million into underrepresented STEM talent. "You showed me what matters," he told Kofi in a quiet lab moment, his voice softer than ever. Kofi, still processing, managed a shy, "Thanks, Mr. Langston." Adwoa, with prize money and donations, opened a community STEM lab in East Palo Alto, its walls lined with circuit boards and hope. "This is for you, Kofi," she said at the opening, her eyes shining as kids tinkered inside. Margaret, demoted, enrolled in bias training, her apology to Kofi halting but sincere. "I was wrong about you," she said, avoiding his gaze. Kofi nodded, his forgiveness quiet but real. Roland, reconciled with Victor, joined the fund's board, his blueprint framed in Zenith Tech's lobby, a symbol of their reborn mission. "You did good, son," he told Victor, his voice gruff but warm, their first real talk in years. Elena, humbled, emailed Kofi about a potential partnership. "You're the future," she wrote, her tone respectful. Kofi, now a local legend, earned an MIT scholarship, his school throwing a parade where Jamal, the bully, clapped awkwardly from the sidelines. Adwoa's petition grew into a movement, challenging Silicon Valley's gatekeepers. Kofi's device cut emissions from Tokyo to London, and Victor, less guarded, spoke at Kofi's lab, admitting, "I was lost until this kid showed up." The crowd cheered, and Kofi, watching, felt his chest swell, not just with pride, but with purpose. 2 years later, Kofi, now 14, stood in the STEM lab, mentoring a shy girl named Aisha with a solar panel prototype. "Keep tinkering," he told her, his voice steady, echoing Adwoa's. The lab buzzed with kids, their projects sparking like fireflies. Adwoa, now its director, watched from her office, her janitor's uniform long gone. "You did this, Kofi," she said, her hug fierce, her eyes wet with pride. Victor, grayer but lighter, visited schools, a mantra. "A kid from East Palo Alto changed the world," he told wide-eyed students, his voice raw with truth. Roland, a regular at the lab, shared stories of Zenith Tech's scrappy days, kids hanging on his every word. Margaret, volunteering, handed out tools, her smile tentative but genuine. The blueprint, in a glass case, drew crowds to the lab, a symbol of what a kid from the margins could do. Silicon Valley hadn't erased its divides. Inequality still loomed, but Kofi's spark had lit a fire. Kids in hoodies walked taller, dreaming of their own inventions. In a quiet moment, Kofi touched the blueprint's case, his reflection mingling with its lines. "We're just getting started," he whispered, his voice steady, his eyes on the future. The blueprint, once a relic, now a beacon, tied Kofi's victory to a world where brilliance could rise from anywhere, no matter the odds.